Chapter 1. The Life Before. William Hunter had always believed that saving lives was his calling. At 34, he'd built a respectable career as an ER physician at St. Luke's Medical Center, working the brutal night shifts that most doctors avoided. The pay differential helped, sure, but more than that, William thrived in those dark hours when the hospital transformed into a battlefield of life and death. His home life seemed equally blessed. Dana, his wife of 5 years, was a former pharmaceutical rep who'd left the workforce after their son Tommy was born. At 3 years old, Tommy was the kind of kid who made strangers smile, bright-eyed, curious, always asking why about everything. Dana's younger sister, Brandy Jefferson, had moved in with them 8 months ago after a bad breakup. William hadn't minded. The house was big enough, and Brandy helped with Tommy when both he and Dana were busy. But lately, something felt off. It started with small things. Dana's phone constantly buzzing with texts she'd quickly dismiss. Brandy volunteering to pick up Tommy from daycare more often, giving Dana free time that she'd spend away from the house. The two sisters whispering in the kitchen, conversations that died the moment William entered the room. William had mentioned it once. "Everything okay? You and Brandy seemed stressed." Dana had laughed, kissed his cheek. "Just sister stuff? You know how it is." He didn't, actually. He was an only child, raised by a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to put him through medical school. She'd died of a heart attack his first year of residency, the same week he'd met Dana at a hospital fundraiser. Dana had been the light that pulled him through that grief. Or so he'd thought. The Tuesday night shift started like any other. William arrived at 7 p.m., grabbed terrible coffee from the break room, and reviewed patient charts. His colleague, Dr. Greg Stokes, was already there, a veteran ER physician in his 50s with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Hunter," Greg nodded. "Quiet so far. Don't jinx it." William chuckled. In the ER, quiet was always temporary. By 11 p.m., they'd handled a car accident victim, 2 chest pain cases, and a kid who'd shoved a Lego up his nose. Standard night. William checked his phone during a lull. No messages from Dana. That was normal. She usually went to bed early with Tommy. At 1:47 a.m., everything changed. Chapter 2. The Collapse. The ambulance bay doors burst open. 2 gurneys rushed in, and William glanced up from his paperwork, then froze. He recognized the jacket on the first gurney. The purple North Face jacket he'd bought Dana for her birthday. His feet moved before his brain caught up, but Greg Stokes materialized in front of him, hands on William's chest. "Will, stop. That's my wife," William's voice cracked. "That's Dana," and the second gurney wheeled past. Brandy, unconscious, oxygen mask covering her face. "What the hell happened? Where's Tommy?" "Third ambulance just pulled up," Greg said quietly. "Will, you need to let the team handle this. You're too close. I'm a doctor, I can. You're a father and a husband first." Greg's grip tightened. "Trust me on this. You shouldn't see them right now." The words hit William like a physical blow. "What do you mean I shouldn't see them? What's wrong with them?" Greg's face was a careful mask, but William had worked with him long enough to read the cracks. Pity. Horror. Something else William couldn't identify. The paramedics said. Greg hesitated. "It looks like an overdose. All 3 of them. They found them at your house." The floor tilted beneath William's feet. "Overdose? That's impossible. Dana doesn't use drugs. Neither does Brandy. And Tommy," his voice strangled in his throat. "Tommy's 3 years old." "I know." Greg's voice was gentle. "The police are on their way. They need to talk to you. Whatever happened at your house?" "Well, it's bad." Dr. Mitchell Johnston, one of the younger ER physicians, rushed past them toward the trauma bay. Through the window, William could see the team working on Dana. Another team crowded around a third gurney, Tommy, so small and still on the adult-sized bed. "I need to be in there," William said, trying to push past Greg. "You need to let them work. If you go in there, you'll compromise everything. The treatment, the investigation, your family's chance at justice." Greg's eyes bore into William's. "I know this is hell, but you have to wait. The police will explain everything." William's medical training warred with his paternal instincts. He wanted to scream, to fight, to tear down the walls separating him from his family. Instead, he forced himself to breathe, to think like a doctor. "Their vitals?" he asked hoarsely. "Tommy's are the most stable. The sisters?" Greg shook his head. "They took more of whatever it was. We're pumping their stomachs now, running tox screens. 23 minutes later, William counted every second. 2 police detectives arrived. The older one was Luther Holt, a bulky man in his 50s with a salt and pepper mustache. His partner was younger, maybe early 30s, introducing herself as Detective Christy Cochran. Dr. Hunter, Holt said, his voice professionally sympathetic. We need to ask you some questions about tonight. I was here, working my shift. I don't know what happened. We know. Your badge logs confirm you've been on the premises since 7 p.m. Detective Cochran pulled out a tablet. We need to ask about what we found at your residence. Just tell me if my son is going to live. William's hands clenched into fists. The doctors are cautiously optimistic about your son, Holt said. He received a smaller dose than the 2 women. But Dr. Hunter, we need to understand what happened tonight. Because what we found at your house raises serious questions. What did you find? William demanded. Cochran's expression hardened. We found 3 wine glasses in your kitchen. 2 were empty. Those appeared to belong to your wife and sister-in-law. The 3rd was barely touched. That one had a cartoon character on it. Tommy's special cup. William had bought it for him. A Spider-Man glass that Tommy insisted on using for grown-up drinks. All 3 glasses tested positive for Rohypnol and crushed Ambien, Cochran continued. A lethal combination for an adult. For a child Tommy's size, it's a miracle he's alive. The world stopped spinning. William heard the words, but they didn't make sense. You're saying someone drugged them? We're saying, Holt interjected, that your wife and sister-in-law appear to have drugged themselves. And your son. That's insane. We also found these. Cochran swiped her tablet, turning it toward William. Text messages. Dozens of them. Between Dana and Brandy, and a 3rd number listed as R. William read the first few messages, his blood turning to ice. Dana to R. He works tonight. 10-hour shift minimum. R to Dana. Perfect. We stick to the plan. Make it look like an accident. Mixing sleeping pills with alcohol. Tragic mistake. Brandy to R. What about Tommy? I don't want him to suffer. R to Brandy. He'll fall asleep first. Won't feel a thing. It's merciful compared to watching his father destroy this family. The messages continued, each one more damning than the last. William's hands trembled as he read about insurance policies, about life insurance payouts, about meeting R at some lake house once this was over. We believe, Detective Holt said quietly, that your wife and sister-in-law were planning to kill your son and make it look like a tragic accident. Maybe a break-in gone wrong, or a murder-suicide. They'd then play the grieving victims, collect the insurance money, and disappear with their accomplice. But something went wrong, Cochran added. Best we can tell, they drank the drugged wine themselves by accident. Maybe they got the glasses mixed up in the dark. Maybe they took sips to make sure it tasted normal. Either way, they ingested enough to knock themselves out. Tommy was found in his bed, unconscious but breathing. He'd drunk maybe a quarter of his glass, probably got sleepy, and stopped drinking. That probably saved his life. Holt's expression softened. Your son's going to need you to be strong right now, Dr. Hunter. William couldn't speak. His mind raced through memories, re-examining every moment of the past months through this new, horrific lens. The whispered conversations. Dana's sudden interest in updating their life insurance policies. Brandy moving in. Had that been planned all along? Who is R? William finally managed to ask. We're working on that, Cochran said. The number's a burner phone, currently turned off. But we will find him. People like this always make mistakes. Chapter 3. The Unraveling. Tommy woke up 36 hours later. William had barely left his son's bedside, surviving on coffee and the adrenaline of rage that burned through his exhaustion. When those small eyes fluttered open, William felt his heart restart. Daddy. Tommy's voice was a whisper. I'm here, buddy. I'm right here. William stroked his son's hair, fighting back tears. How do you feel? Sleepy. Want mommy. The words shattered William's carefully maintained composure. How did you explain to a 3-year-old that his mother had tried to kill him? Mommy's sick right now, William said softly. But I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Dr. Johnston entered, reviewed Tommy's vitals, and gave William a cautiously optimistic prognosis. He'll make a full recovery. Kids are resilient. Though, Johnston hesitated. He might not remember much about that night. Rohypnol causes anterograde amnesia. In some ways, that's a blessing. After Johnston left, William sat in the dim hospital room and faced a truth he'd been avoiding. He couldn't trust the police to handle this. Not fully. The man who'd manipulated Dana and Brandy was still out there, and if he realized his plan had failed, he might disappear forever. William needed answers, and he needed them before or realized the police were looking for him. He waited until Tommy was sleeping soundly, then pulled out his phone. Dana's phone had been taken as evidence, but William still had access to their shared iCloud account. Within minutes, he'd restored her text message backup to his laptop. The message history with R went back 7 months. William read through them chronologically, his stomach churning with each revelation. It had started innocuously enough. Dana had met R at a coffee shop, a chance encounter, or so the messages suggested. Compliments, flirtation, then meetings. The texts grew more intimate, more explicit. Brandy got involved a month later, and the dynamic shifted into something darker. R wasn't just having an affair with Dana. He was methodically manipulating both sisters, playing them against each other, convincing them that William was the source of all their unhappiness. The messages painted William as a neglectful husband, an absent father, someone who didn't deserve the family he had. But it was the later messages that revealed the true horror. R to Dana, I've done this before. I know how insurance investigations work. As long as there's no clear evidence of foul play, they have to pay out. That's $2 million, split 3 ways. Dana to R, what about the other women you mentioned? The ones who helped you before? R to Dana, they got their money and moved on. We'll do the same. Fresh start in Mexico. New identities. The life we deserve. William's hands shook as he pieced it together. R was a serial killer who targeted doctors' families. He seduced wives and family members, convinced them to murder the husband, took his cut of the insurance money, and disappeared. Dana and Brandy weren't his first victims. They were his accomplices. And Tommy had been collateral damage in their greed. William dove deeper into the iCloud backups, searching for anything that might identify R. He found photos, always taken carefully to avoid showing the man's face clearly. But in one image, taken at a restaurant, William spotted something. A reflection in a window behind Dana. A man sitting at another table, watching them. The photo quality wasn't great, but William could make out dark hair, a strong jawline, and a distinctive tattoo on the man's forearm, a compass rose. He ran the image through a reverse image search, enhanced it using free online tools, and began cross-referencing with local social media profiles. It took hours, but finally he found a match. Randy Velasquez, 38 years old. According to his Facebook profile, he was a life coach and financial consultant who'd lived in 4 different states over the past decade. His profile was carefully curated, motivational quotes, pictures of luxury cars and exotic vacations, always alone or with different women who were never tagged. William dug deeper. He created fake social media profiles, joined online forums about financial fraud, searched through newspaper archives in the cities where Velasquez had lived. A pattern emerged. In Phoenix, a Dr. Marcus Wade had died in a home invasion 3 years ago. His widow, Kelly Zimmerman Wade, had collected a substantial life insurance payout and moved to Mexico. Within weeks of her departure, Randy Velasquez had closed his Phoenix apartment and relocated to Austin. In Austin, Dr. Lawrence Smith had died in what was ruled a suicide. His wife disappeared shortly after, and once again, Velasquez moved, this time to Denver. Denver had seen the death of Dr. Julius Wilcox in a tragic accident during a hiking trip. Another widow, another insurance payout, another disappearing act. The pattern was undeniable. Randy Velasquez was a predator who specifically targeted doctors, using charm and manipulation to turn their own families against them. And he was very, very good at it. William stared at Velasquez's smiling face on the computer screen, memorizing every feature. The police would eventually track him down, but that could take months. Velasquez was careful, experienced. He knew how to cover his tracks. But William had advantages the police didn't. He knew Velasquez's type, his methods, his weaknesses. And William had something Velasquez had never encountered before, a victim who'd survived to fight back. Dana woke up the next morning. William stood outside her ICU room, watching through the window as she opened her eyes, confusion giving way to panic as she realized where she was. Detective Cochran was already in the room, reading Dana her rights. Through the glass, William couldn't hear the words, but he watched Dana's face cycle through emotions, shock, denial, fear, and finally, cold calculation. She was trying to figure out her next move, how to spin this. The same woman who'd planned to murder their son was now strategizing her defense. William felt something shift inside him. The love he'd carried for Dana evaporated, replaced by something colder and far more dangerous. She'd taken the life they'd built and tried to burn it down for money and a fantasy with a psychopath. She didn't know it yet, but she'd made a fatal mistake. She'd left Tommy alive, and she'd left William with both the motive and the means to make Randy Velasquez pay for every life he'd destroyed, including the one he'd nearly taken from William's son. Detective Cochran emerged from Dana's room, shaking her head. She's lawyering up. Won't say a word about Velasquez or where we can find him. She's protecting him, William said flatly. Or she's scared of him. Cochran studied William's face. How are you holding up, Dr. Hunter? I want him caught. We all do. We've issued a bolo for Velasquez, flagged his last known vehicles, alerted the Border Patrol. If he tries to run, we'll grab him. And if he's already gone? Cochran's silence was answer enough. William returned to Tommy's room, where his son was coloring in a book one of the nurses had brought. Looking at Tommy's innocent face, still trusting despite everything that had happened, William made a decision. The police would do their job, but William would do his. And Randy Velasquez was about to learn that destroying a doctor's family came with a very specific diagnosis: terminal. Chapter 4: The Architect of Ruin. William discharged Tommy 3 days later under the watchful eye of his mother's best friend, Jody Gilbert. Jody was a no-nonsense elementary school teacher who'd been horrified to learn of Dana's betrayal and immediately volunteered to help with Tommy. I never trusted that Brandy, Jody had said, her voice tight with anger. Always seemed like she was playing an angle. But Dana, I thought she loved you. She loved what I could provide, William replied. There's a difference. With Tommy safe, William dedicated himself to tracking Randy Velasquez. The police investigation moved slowly, proper warrants, jurisdictional red tape, legal protocols. William didn't have those constraints. He started by visiting the coffee shop where Dana's messages indicated she'd first met Velasquez. A small place called The Grind, tucked into a strip mall near the hospital. The barista, a college student named Max Garrison, remembered Dana. Yeah, she used to come in a lot. Usually met some guy here. Max's face darkened. Actually, now that I think about it, he's met with a lot of women here. Different ones every few weeks. You remember what he looked like? Dark hair, always dressed nice. Real smooth talker. He'd order a black coffee and sit in the corner booth like he was waiting. Then these women would come in. Usually looked married, you know? Wedding rings, that kind of thing. They'd talk for hours. Did you ever hear what they talked about? Max shrugged. I try not to eavesdrop, but sometimes I'd catch bits. He was always complimenting them, making them feel special. Classic pickup artist stuff, except he only seemed interested in married women. William showed Max a photo of Velasquez. This him? That's the guy? Haven't seen him in a while, though? Maybe 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Right when Dana and Brandy's plan was supposed to culminate. Velasquez had likely left town, assuming everything had gone according to plan. William's next stop was less legal. He accessed hospital records using his credentials, a violation of privacy laws, but he was past caring about consequences. He searched for any patients or visitors named Randy Velasquez or matching his description. Nothing. But when he expanded the search to include emergency contacts and insurance beneficiaries, something pinged. A woman named Marissa Kent had listed Randy Velasquez as her emergency contact 4 months ago when she'd brought her husband, Dr. David Robinson, to the ER for chest pains. William pulled up David Robinson's file. The doctor had died 3 weeks later, sudden cardiac arrest at age 42. The autopsy had noted elevated levels of digitalis in his system, a heart medication that in high doses could trigger fatal arrhythmias. The death was ruled as an accidental overdose of his own medication. Marissa Kent had collected a $2 million life insurance payout and moved to Costa Rica. William felt sick. Velasquez's pattern was even more extensive than he'd thought. The man didn't just manipulate wives into killing their husbands. Sometimes he did it himself, making it look like natural causes or accidents. He tracked down David Robinson's medical records from before his death. Robinson had been treating his heart condition for years, but his medication doses had been stable. Then, in the weeks before his death, his wife Marissa had suddenly taken over managing his medications, insisting on preparing his pill organizer herself. The same pattern appeared in the other deaths. Wives suddenly becoming more helpful with medication management. Husbands dying of accidental overdoses or tragic mistakes. Velasquez was methodical, patient, and ruthless. He identified targets, successful doctors with substantial life insurance policies and marriages showing stress. He seduced family members, usually wives or live-in relatives. He isolated them emotionally, built trust, then proposed the solution to all their problems. And it had worked at least 4 times that William could confirm. Probably more that hadn't been connected yet. William created a detailed profile of Velasquez based on everything he'd learned. The man was in his late 30s, charismatic, with knowledge of medicine and insurance law. He never stayed in one city long enough to establish roots. He used burner phones and fake social media profiles. He was highly intelligent and completely devoid of empathy. A psychopath in the clinical sense. Someone who viewed other people as tools to be used and discarded. William needed to think like Velasquez. Where would he go after Dana's plan failed? The man wouldn't know that his accomplices had drugged themselves instead of William. He'd assumed the plan had succeeded, that William was dead, that Dana and Brandy were playing the role of traumatized victims, and that the insurance money would be flowing soon. So Velasquez would be waiting, expecting contact from Dana or Brandy to confirm the plan's success. William smiled grimly. He could use that. Chapter 5, The Trap. William knew he couldn't send messages from Dana's confiscated phone, but he had another option. Before Brandy had been arrested and transferred to a psychiatric facility for evaluation, William had gotten close enough to lift her phone from her personal belongings. Morally questionable? Absolutely. But Brandy had tried to kill his son. William's moral compass had been thoroughly recalibrated. Using Brandy's phone, he reviewed her message history with Velasquez. The texts painted an even darker picture. Velasquez had played the two sisters against each other, making each think she was his favorite, his real partner. To Dana, he'd promised a life of luxury in Mexico. To Brandy, he'd whispered about starting fresh in the Caribbean, just the two of them. He'd never intended to honor either promise. Once he had the money, he would disappear, leaving them both as accessories to murder with no way to prove his involvement. William composed a message carefully, mimicking Brandy's texting style. Brandy to R, it's done. But there were complications. Dana, and I need to lay low longer than planned. Police are asking questions. When can we talk? He waited. Hours passed. Then, finally, a response. R to Brandy. What kind of complications? Brandy to R, they found Tommy. He's alive. Doctor said he didn't drink enough. But William is dead. They're ruling it as murder-suicide. Saying William killed Tommy, then himself, and we tried to stop him. Another long pause. William could almost feel Velasquez recalculating, assessing risks. R to Brandy. That's not the plan we discussed. Brandy to R, I know. But it's better this way. We look like victims. Insurance will still pay. We just need to wait a few months. R to Brandy. We need to meet. Face to face. Can you get away? Perfect. William typed quickly. Brandy to R, they're watching us. Can you come to the city? There's a parking garage on 7th Street. Level 3, southwest corner. Midnight tomorrow. I'll be alone. R to Brandy. This feels wrong. Why the change? Brandy to R, because I need to see you. Because I need to know you're still with me. Brandy, I did this for us. Don't abandon me now. The emotional appeal was risky, but William had read enough of Brandy's messages to know she'd used similar language before. Velasquez responded to vulnerability. It fed his narcissism. R to Brandy, midnight. 7th Street garage. Come alone. If I sense anything wrong, I'm gone forever. Brandy to R, I love you. R to Brandy, I know. William stared at that last message, feeling a surge of cold fury. Velasquez couldn't even return a declaration of love from someone who'd committed murder for him. The man was a black hole where empathy should exist. William spent the next day preparing. He visited 3 different pharmacies, purchasing over-the-counter medications that could be combined in creative ways. His medical knowledge became a weapon. He also visited a storage unit he'd rented years ago, one Dana had never known about. Inside were items from his childhood, his mother's belongings, old textbooks, and a locked box containing something William hadn't touched in 15 years. His mother's service revolver. She'd kept it for protection during her late-night shifts at the convenience store. William had kept it after she died, unable to bring himself to sell it, but never wanting to use it. Now he checked the weapon carefully, loaded it, and tucked it into his waistband. If Velasquez tried to run, William needed options. The 7th Street parking garage was a brutalist concrete structure that served the downtown business district. By midnight, it was nearly empty, just a few cars belonging to third-shift workers. William arrived early, parking his car on level 2 with a clear view of the level 3 stairs. He'd positioned himself behind a concrete pillar, dressed in dark clothes, watching, waiting. At 11:58 p.m., a black SUV with rental plates pulled onto level 3. Randy Velasquez stepped out, looking exactly like his photos, handsome in a predatory way, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never been caught. Velasquez scanned the area, checking for surveillance cameras. William had already spray-painted those lenses, looking for signs of a trap. Finding nothing obvious, he leaned against his SUV, checking his phone, waiting for Brandy, who would never come. At 12:15 a.m., Velasquez's phone buzzed. William watched him read the message, which William had sent from Brandy's phone, running late. 5 minutes, and curse under his breath. At 12:30 a.m., when Brandy still hadn't appeared, Velasquez began to pace. His body language shifted from confident to agitated. He made a phone call, probably trying to reach Brandy, and William's pocket vibrated as the stolen phone received the call. Velasquez tried twice more, then gave up. He climbed back into his SUV, and for a moment, William thought he might drive away. Instead, Velasquez just sat there, engine off, staring at his phone. William realized what was happening. Velasquez was suspicious, yes, but he was also greedy. $2 million was worth the risk of waiting a little longer. That greed would be his downfall. William moved silently through the shadows, approaching the SUV from the passenger side. He'd learned these tactics in medical school, during a rotation with an ER doctor who'd served as a military medic. How to move quietly, how to stay out of sight lines, how to approach someone without triggering their peripheral vision alarms. When William was 3 feet from the passenger door, he pulled the revolver, kept it low, and knocked on the window. Velasquez's head snapped up, eyes wide. For a second, he froze. Then his hand moved toward the glove compartment. "Don't," William said quietly, aiming the gun at Velasquez's chest through the window. "Put both hands on the steering wheel where I can see them." "Who the hell are you?" Velasquez demanded, but his hands moved to the wheel. He was calculating odds, looking for escape routes. "I'm the doctor you tried to kill," William said. "William Hunter, husband of Dana, father of Tommy, the one who was supposed to die so you could take my money." Recognition flashed across Velasquez's face, followed by genuine fear. "You're supposed to be dead." Disappointed? Velasquez's expression shifted, the fear melting into that same smooth charm William had seen in photos. "Look, Dr. Hunter, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Your wife and her sister came to me with a plan. I tried to talk them out of it, but they were determined. I was going to go to the police, but I was scared." "Save it," William cut him off. "I've read your messages. I know about Marcus Wade in Phoenix, Lawrence Smith in Austin, Julius Wilcox in Denver, David Robinson here. You're a serial killer who uses women as weapons. And you're about to face justice." "Justice?" Velasquez's smile returned, colder now. "You're pointing a gun at me in an empty parking garage. You're not justice. You're just another criminal." "Maybe," William agreed. "But I'm a criminal with nothing left to lose. You tried to take everything from me. My wife, my son, my life. The only thing you accomplished was showing me who I really am when everything's stripped away. And who's that? Someone capable of doing what needs to be done." William opened the passenger door, keeping the gun trained on Velasquez. "Start the car. You're going to drive us somewhere quiet where we can have a longer conversation. And if I refuse, then I shoot you here, drive your SUV into the river with you in it, and let the police find you in a week when you wash up downstream. Either way, you're not leaving this city alive." Velasquez stared at William for a long moment, seeing something in his eyes that made the decision easy. "Where are we going?" "You'll know when we get there," William said, climbing into the passenger seat. "Now drive." Chapter 6. The Confession. William directed Velasquez to an abandoned medical clinic on the outskirts of the city. The building had belonged to William's mentor, an old doctor who died 2 years ago and whose estate was still tied up in probate. William still had keys from when he'd done rotations there as a resident. Inside, the clinic was dusty but intact. Exam rooms with rusted equipment, a small office, and a basement that had once been used for storage. William made Velasquez sit in an exam chair in the largest treatment room, then used medical restraints, the soft cloth kind used for confused patients, to secure his arms and legs to the chair. "This is kidnapping," Velasquez said, his voice steady despite the situation. "You're throwing away your career, your freedom. For what? Revenge? Justice?" William corrected, pulling up a stool. "The police would never get enough evidence to connect you to all your victims. You're too careful, too practiced. But I don't need evidence that would hold up in court. I just need the truth. I'm not telling you anything." William smiled. "Actually, you are. Because I'm going to offer you something no one else can, a choice in how this ends. Is that supposed to be mercy? It's supposed to be pragmatism." William pulled out his phone, set it to record. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to confess to every murder you've orchestrated. Names, dates, methods, every detail. In exchange, I'll make sure your death is quick and painless." Velasquez laughed, but there was an edge of hysteria in it. "You're a doctor. You took an oath. First, do no harm. I also took an oath to protect my family. You tried to destroy that. The oath doesn't apply to you anymore." William leaned forward. "Let me be clear. I've spent days researching your victims. I know what you did to Marcus Wade. You convinced his wife to slowly poison him with his own heart medication. I know you had Lawrence Smith's wife sabotage his brakes before that accident. I know about Julius Wilcox's widow mixing antifreeze into his protein shakes on your instruction. You can't prove any of that. I can prove you were in relationships with all their wives shortly before they died. I can prove you left each city immediately after the life insurance paid out. I can prove you're here now, meeting with my wife's sister, days after my family was nearly murdered." William held up the phone. "But more importantly, I can make sure that every detail of your crimes is preserved and sent to the police. If you confess now, on this recording, you give the families of your victims closure. You give them justice. And you kill me anyway." "Yes," William said simply. "But your choice is this. Confess, and your death is quick. Fight me, and I have ways of making the next few days very unpleasant for you. I'm a doctor, remember. I know exactly how much pain the human body can endure before shutting down." For the first time, real fear showed on Velasquez's face. "You're bluffing. You're not a killer. 3 weeks ago, I wasn't. But you changed that when you put drugs in my son's cup." William's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you know what it's like to see your 3-year-old son lying in a hospital bed, unconscious, because his own mother tried to murder him for money? Do you know what that does to a person? That wasn't my fault. I didn't force them to. You manipulated them. You identified their weaknesses, exploited their insecurities, and turned them into weapons. That's what you do. That's what you are." William stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a syringe. "This is potassium chloride. In the right dose, it causes cardiac arrest. Quick, relatively painless. That's option 1. He set the syringe down, then pulled out a bottle of pills. "These are sodium thiopental tablets. I ground them myself. Mixed with water and injected slowly, they cause excruciating pain throughout the nervous system before eventual paralysis. That's option 2. You're insane." "No," William said calmly. "I'm a father protecting his son by removing a threat. Now choose. Confession and mercy, or silence and suffering." Velasquez's composure finally cracked. His voice shook as he said, "If I confess, how do I know you'll actually make it quick? Because unlike you, I'm not a sadist. I don't enjoy inflicting pain. I just need to ensure you never hurt another family." The silence stretched. William waited, letting the reality of the situation sink in. Finally, Velasquez closed his eyes. "Start recording." For the next 47 minutes, Randy Velasquez confessed to everything. 6 murders over 9 years, each one meticulously planned and executed through manipulation of victims' family members. He described his methods in clinical detail, how he identified targets, how he groomed accomplices, how he eliminated witnesses. He confessed to being in the cafe when Marcus Wade's wife, Kelly, added digitalis to his coffee. He admitted convincing Lawrence Smith's widow to cut the brake lines on her husband's car. He described watching Julius Wilcox die slowly from antifreeze poisoning, all while comforting the man's wife. And he confessed to the Dana and Brandy plan, how he'd spent months isolating them from William, building resentment, making them see murder as liberation. They were so easy, Velasquez said, his voice hollow. They wanted to believe they deserved better. I just told them what they wanted to hear. When he finished, William stopped the recording. He uploaded it immediately to a cloud service, set it to automatically send to Detective Cochran's email in 24 hours unless William manually canceled the send. There, Velasquez said. Your insurance policy. Now keep your end of the deal. William looked at the man who'd nearly destroyed his life, feeling nothing but cold purpose. I will. But first, you need to understand something. What? You're not going to die tonight. Confusion crossed Velasquez's face. But you said. I said you'd have a choice in how this ends. And you made your choice by confessing. William pulled out his phone, dialed a number. Detective Cochran? This is Dr. William Hunter. I have a gift for you. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. Detective Cochran arrived with Detective Holt and 4 uniformed officers. They found Randy Velasquez restrained in the exam chair, and William sitting calmly on a stool, his hands visible and empty. Dr. Hunter, Cochran said slowly, what have you done? I've obtained a full confession from Mr. Velasquez regarding 6 murders, including the attempted murder of my family. William handed her his phone. It's all recorded. Names, dates, methods. Enough to close multiple cold cases across 4 states. Holt immediately began reading Velasquez his rights while 2 officers released him from the restraints and placed him in handcuffs. Velasquez said nothing, his earlier confidence completely shattered. We need to talk about how you obtained this confession, Cochran said to William. Kidnapping is a serious crime, and if you coerced him, I made him an offer, William interrupted. I told him I'd ensure his testimony reached the authorities in exchange for his cooperation. He agreed voluntarily. Dr. Hunter, Detective, every word on that recording is true. You'll verify it with your investigation. And when you do, you'll close 6 murders and prevent future ones. Isn't that worth considering how the confession was obtained? Cochran's expression was conflicted. You understand I have to arrest you for kidnapping. I expected that. William held out his wrists. But before you do, there's one more thing you should know. Velasquez wasn't working alone in all cases. Check his bank records. You'll find payments to a woman named Vicky O'Neill. She's his cleaner. She helps establish alibis, disposes of evidence. How do you know that? He mentioned her in the confession. Track her down, and you'll have corroboration for everything he said. As officers led both William and Velasquez towards separate patrol cars, Cochran stopped William. Why did you call us? If you'd wanted him dead, you could have done it and disposed of the body. No one would have known. William glanced back at the clinic. Because I'm not him, and because my son deserves to grow up knowing his father chose justice over revenge. Even if that justice lands you in prison? Even then. Chapter 8, The Scales of Justice. The legal proceedings took months. William was charged with kidnapping and assault, though the prosecutor acknowledged the extraordinary circumstances. Velasquez, meanwhile, faced 6 counts of first-degree murder, multiple counts of conspiracy, and attempted murder. Dana and Brandy were charged as accessories to attempted murder. Both pled guilty in exchange for reduced sentences. Dana received 15 years, Brandy 20 due to her more active role in obtaining the drugs. The trial became a media sensation. Doctor turns vigilante to catch serial killer, read the headlines. Public opinion was divided. Some called William a hero, others a criminal who'd crossed an unforgivable line. William's defense attorney, a sharp woman named Candace Matthews, built their case around temporary insanity and justifiable action to prevent future harm. My client discovered his wife and her sister had attempted to murder his son at the direction of a serial killer, she argued in court. He was in acute psychological distress, operating under extreme emotional trauma, and his actions, while illegal, directly led to the prevention of future murders and the closure of multiple cold cases. The judge, an older man named Omar Floyd, heard testimony from psychiatrists, FBI profilers, and the families of Velasquez's victims. One widow, the daughter of Julius Wilcox, testified that without William's actions, her family would never have known the truth about her father's death. In the end, Judge Floyd sentenced William to 3 years in prison, suspended after 18 months served, plus 5 years probation. Your actions, Dr. Hunter, were illegal and cannot be condoned, the judge said. However, the extraordinary circumstances, your lack of criminal history, and the undeniable good that resulted from your actions warrant leniency. Velasquez received 6 consecutive life sentences without parole. Chapter 9. The Aftermath. 18 months later, William Hunter walked out of the minimum security prison where he'd served his sentence. Jody Gilbert was waiting for him, and standing beside her, holding a bouquet of flowers that he'd clearly picked himself, was Tommy. "Daddy." The 5-year-old ran forward, and William swept him up, feeling tears he'd held back for months finally break free. "Hey, buddy. I missed you so much." "I missed you too. Jody said you were helping the police catch bad guys. Are the bad guys gone now?" "Yeah," William said, holding his son close. "The bad guys are gone." In the car, Jody updated William on the past year and a half. Tommy was thriving in kindergarten, showing an early interest in science and dinosaurs. The insurance company had eventually paid out William's policy, since he hadn't actually died, and William had placed the money in a trust for Tommy's education. Dana was in prison, and after 6 months of therapy, William had come to terms with the fact that she'd never really loved him, at least not the way he'd thought. Brandy had attempted to reach out once, a letter full of apologies and excuses. William had burned it without reading past the first paragraph. "What will you do now?" Jody asked as they drove toward the small apartment William had rented. His medical license was suspended pending an ethics review, and he'd likely never practice in an ER again. But he'd been offered a position teaching at a medical school and a consulting role with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to help identify similar cases of manipulation leading to murder. "I'm going to be a dad," William said, watching Tommy in the rearview mirror. "Everything else is secondary." That night, after Tommy had fallen asleep in his new room, decorated with dinosaur posters and glow-in-the-dark stars, William stood on the small balcony of their apartment, looking out at the city lights. He thought about Randy Velasquez, rotting in a maximum security prison, his charm and manipulation useless against hardened criminals who saw him for what he was. He thought about Dana and Brandy, facing years of consequences for their greed and weakness. He thought about the families of Velasquez's victims, finally having closure and justice. And he thought about the man he'd become through this nightmare. Not a hero, he'd never claimed that title, but not a victim either. He'd faced the worst humanity could offer and emerged on the other side with his son safe and his conscience, if not clean, at least at peace. William had learned something fundamental in those dark months, that justice and revenge weren't opposites, but rather points on a spectrum. And sometimes, doing the right thing meant crossing lines you never thought you'd approach. He'd crossed those lines for Tommy. And given the same circumstances, he'd do it again without hesitation. Behind him, Tommy stirred, called out softly for his daddy. William smiled, went inside, and sat beside his son's bed, holding the small hand that reached for him. "I'm here, buddy. I'm always going to be here." And in that moment, despite everything he'd lost and everything he'd done, William Hunter realized he'd won the only battle that truly mattered. He'd saved his son, and he'd made damn sure the monsters who'd threatened his family would never hurt anyone again. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.